They told me to smile, to serve quietly, to let powerful men say and do whatever they pleased, because that's just how it is in first class. But the day the billionaire's son crossed the line at 30,000 feet, I didn't smile. I slapped him. 1 second of defiance, and my entire career vanished. I was fired, shamed, blacklisted. They said I'd ruined my own life. But here's the thing about trying to bury a woman who's already been through hell. You don't bury her, you plant her. And when I rose, I didn't rise quietly. Because sometimes revenge doesn't come with rage. It comes with truth, proof, and a voice too loud to silence. This isn't just a story about a flight attendant who slapped a billionaire. It's about every woman who's ever been told to stay quiet and finally decided to make some noise. Keep watching because this time, the sky fights back. There's an art to pretending nothing gets to you. In the air, we call it service face, the calm expression that hides exhaustion, irritation, and sometimes fear. That morning, my service face was flawless. We'd taken off smoothly, the cabin lights dimmed to gold, the passengers cocooned in their luxury, champagne flutes, silk blankets, whispers of old money. I moved down the aisle, checking seatbelts, smiling, making sure everything looked effortless. Adrian Knight was in 2A, the window seat. Sunglasses on, shoes off, arrogance fully engaged. He watched me every time I passed, his phone tilted slightly toward me as if recording discreetly. The first time, I told myself it was paranoia. The second time, I knew it was. "Ms. Carter, right?" he asked, snapping his fingers gently when I approached. "You've been doing this long." 10 years, I said evenly. "Impressive, you make it look graceful." He dragged the word out, as though testing how far he could stretch it before it snapped. "Thank you, sir. Can I get you anything?" "Maybe some company. You don't sit down, do you?" The man across the aisle chuckled awkwardly. Adrian smirked, clearly enjoying my discomfort. "Sorry, Mr. Knight, I'm working," I replied, stepping back. He tilted his head, amused. Working hard or hardly working. That was his rhythm, the kind of teasing that wasn't overtly offensive, but still designed to chip away at dignity. I'd dealt with it before. Executives, politicians, celebrities, all convinced the crew existed to feed their egos. But there was something about Adrian that made my stomach tighten, a confidence too deliberate. Hours passed, service completed, passengers asleep or watching movies, the cabin lights dimmed to a soft twilight. I leaned against the galley counter, finally breathing for the first time in hours. My colleague, Jenna, whispered beside me. "You okay? He's been watching you like a hawk." "I'm fine, he's just bored." She gave me a knowing look. Bored men with power are dangerous. She wasn't wrong. When I returned to check on first class, Adrian was awake, or pretending to be. He was scrolling through his phone, a half-empty glass of scotch beside him. "Ms. Carter," he said softly, "could you adjust my seat? It's stuck." I nodded and leaned over to check the control panel. That's when it happened, so quick, so deliberate I almost doubted it. His hand brushed my waist. At first, I froze, thinking it was accidental. But when his fingers lingered, pressing lightly against my uniform, something inside me broke loose. I stepped back instantly. "Sir, that's inappropriate." He smiled lazily. "Relax, it's just a touch. You're overreacting." "No, I'm not." The nearby passenger turned his head. The cabin grew quieter, sensing tension. Adrian leaned forward, voice dripping with mock sincerity. "You should be grateful, you know. Most people would kill to have my attention." I heard a gasp, maybe Jenna's, maybe mine. In that moment, 10 years of training vanished. 10 years of swallowing disrespect, of smiling when I wanted to scream, of being treated like a servant in heels. My hand moved before I thought. The sound, a sharp, clean crack, echoed through the cabin. Gasps erupted. Someone's phone was already recording. Adrian's hand shot to his cheek, eyes wide with disbelief. You hit me." "You touched me," I said quietly. Silence. Even the hum of the engine seemed to pause. For a second, I almost regretted it, almost. Then I saw the smirk returning, twisting into a sneer. "You're finished," he hissed. "You have no idea who you just slapped." He was right, I didn't, not really. All I knew was that, for the first time in my career, I'd stopped being afraid. I turned and walked away, every step echoing like thunder in that golden cabin. Jenna's voice followed softly. "Maya, what have you done?" What I should have done a long time ago. But even as I said it, my heart pounded. I could already feel the fallout building, an invisible turbulence waiting just beyond the horizon. By the time we began our descent into Heathrow, Adrian had already called someone his father, his lawyers, maybe both. The captain avoided my eyes. My supervisor's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ms. Carter, please remain on board after landing." The calm before the storm was over. And I was about to learn what happens when a woman says no to power, at 30,000 feet. The plane touched down at Heathrow with a jolt that shook through my bones. Or maybe that was just the weight in my chest. Passengers whispered as we taxied to the gate, glancing between me and Adrian like we were part of some live drama unfolding in slow motion. He sat smugly in his seat, ice pressed to his cheek, a faint red mark where my hand had landed. He wasn't angry anymore. He looked calculated. "You'll regret this," he murmured as I passed to do final checks. "I promise you that." I didn't answer. My throat was dry. Every movement felt rehearsed: unfasten, collect, thank you for flying. But my hands trembled just enough that even the other attendants noticed. When the door opened, our supervisor, Claire, was already there, flanked by 2 uniformed security officers and a man in a tailored gray suit I didn't recognize. "Ms. Carter," Claire said, her voice clipped, formal, cold. "You'll need to step aside for questioning before deplaning." Passengers slowed as they exited, pretending not to watch, though phones gleamed in their hands like judgmental eyes. "Is this about the incident?" I asked. "Please don't make a scene," she said. That word, scene, cut deeper than it should have, as if I'd turned a crime into a performance. I followed them into the jet bridge. My heels clicked against the metal floor, echoing through the hollow silence. Adrian brushed past, escorted by an assistant who whispered, "Mr. Knight, we've arranged transport to the private terminal." He didn't even glance back. The interrogation room was a bland corporate box, beige walls, a single table, fluorescent lighting that buzzed just loud enough to fray my nerves. Across from me sat the man in the gray suit. He introduced himself as Richard Holt, HR Compliance Director. "Ms. Carter," he began, "do you understand the severity of the situation?" "Yes," I said quietly. "He touched me inappropriately. I asked him to stop. He didn't, I reacted." He nodded mechanically, jotting notes. "There are passenger statements and video footage circulating online. Have you seen them?" "No, I've been here." He turned his tablet around. There it was, the moment. Frozen on screen. My hand midair, Adrian's head snapping sideways. Someone had uploaded it with the caption, "Flight attendant assaults billionaire's son." The comments scrolled beneath it. "Unprofessional. Probably trying to get famous. Women always play the victim." Each word felt like a slap of its own. "You're suspended pending investigation," Holt said. "Effective immediately. We'll contact you once internal review concludes." "What about him?" "Mr. Knight is a passenger. The matter will be handled separately." "Separately," I repeated, meaning not at all. He didn't respond, just slid a paper across the table, notice of suspension without pay. When I left the airport, the media was already waiting. Flashbulbs burst like gunfire. Reporters shouted questions. "Maya Carter, did you hit Adrian Knight? Were you intoxicated during the flight? Do you plan to apologize?" I covered my face and pushed through the crowd, but someone's voice pierced the chaos. "She deserved it. You can't touch your boss's son." Boss's son. That was what I was reduced to, an employee who forgot her place. By the time I reached the hotel, my uniform felt like a costume. a lie stitched from someone else's pride. I tore off the scarf, the jacket, the badge. They landed in a heap on the carpet. The TV played muted news clips. Skylux Airlines confirms flight attendant under investigation. My picture flashed beside Adrian's, his polished PR photo against my ID badge, the contrast almost cruel. The phone buzzed. Dozens of missed calls, coworkers, family, even strangers. A text from Jenna blinked on screen. They told us not to comment. I'm sorry, Maya. Please stay quiet. It'll blow over. Stay quiet. That was the company's favorite phrase. I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through the comments again. Each one felt like a nail sealing my coffin. She's lying. Women like her ruin men's lives. Fired yet. I wanted to scream, but the sound got trapped somewhere between my ribs. Instead, I opened my journal, a habit I'd picked up years ago during layovers when silence was safer than conversation. I wrote, if I lose everything for defending myself, then maybe it was never worth keeping. The city lights outside blurred through the rain-streaked window. I thought about my mother, a nurse who raised me to stand tall no matter how hard life tried to bend me. I could almost hear her voice. They can take your uniform, Maya. Don't let them take your name. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the video on repeat until I stopped flinching. And somewhere around 3 a.m., as the world tore my story apart online, a strange calm settled over me. They could twist the narrative, but they couldn't erase the truth. I had been humiliated, yes, but not defeated. Because deep down, I knew something they didn't. When you hit rock bottom, there's only one direction left, up. I used to measure time by flight schedules. Boarding at 7:45, takeoff at 8:10, service by 9:00. Now my days blurred together, job applications, rejection emails, silence. It had been 3 weeks since the incident, 3 weeks since I'd been escorted out of Heathrow like a criminal. At first, I thought it was temporary. I kept my routines. I ironed my uniform even though I had nowhere to wear it. I checked my phone every morning expecting a call from HR, maybe reinstatement, maybe a chance to explain. But the call never came. Instead, I got this. Subject, application update, Horizon Air. Dear Ms. Carter, we regret to inform you that after review, we are unable to move forward with your application. Then another. Position filled. Then a third, from an airline that hadn't even interviewed me. We have reviewed your profile and determined you are not a suitable candidate. 3 rejections became 5, then 10. It wasn't coincidence, it was exile. By the second month, I'd moved back into my tiny apartment in London, a space that once felt cozy, now claustrophobic. My savings were evaporating fast. One evening, while scrolling through job forums, I noticed something strange. Someone on a private industry board had posted a blurry photo of me with the caption, "Be careful hearing her, Skylux issue, incident girl." I clicked the thread. A dozen replies followed. Heard she hit a passenger. HR flagged her name, not worth the risk. Banned from the network. Banned. The word hit like free fall. I took a shaky breath and whispered to myself, they did it. They actually blacklisted me. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Check your email, from someone who still believes you. No name, no signature. A new message appeared in my inbox seconds later, subject line. Internal HR memo, confidential. My heart pounded as I opened the PDF. It was an internal Skylux email chain between executives. The text was crisp, cold, and soul-crushing. Effective immediately, ensure all partner airlines are informed that Ms. Maya Carter is not eligible for rehire. Reputational risk. Maintain unified stance. Do not engage media. Signed by Richard Holt, the same man who'd suspended me. It wasn't just punishment, it was erasure. They hadn't just fired me, they made sure I'd never fly again. For a long time, I just stared at the screen. Anger burned beneath my ribs, slow and heavy, but grief sat above it, a suffocating weight. I thought about all those years of loyalty, the double shifts, the canceled holidays, the moments of danger where I'd stayed calm while passengers screamed. And this was my reward. When the tears finally came, they weren't soft. They were sharp, the kind that carve new lines into your face. But when they stopped, something else settled in their place. Resolve. If they could leak lies about me, I could leak truth about them. I spent the next week researching, reading old articles, checking complaint boards, tracing every rumor I'd ever overheard during crew briefings. There were whispers about company parties that turned predatory, about female attendants who resigned quietly, about HR cases that vanished without record. Patterns. One name appeared 3 times, Adrian Knight. I reached out to Jenna. She hesitated to respond at first, then finally agreed to meet at a small cafe near Paddington, her hair tucked under a cap like she was hiding from the world. "Maya, this is dangerous," she whispered. "You don't understand how high this goes." "Then help me understand," I said. She looked around before sliding her phone across the table. A message thread, private chat between attendants. He cornered me during a layover. They told me to sign an NDA or lose my job. He's done this before. I felt sick. How many? "At least 4 that I know of," Jenna said. "But none of us could prove it. HR always sided with him. And they fired me for fighting back." Jenna nodded slowly. "You weren't supposed to fight back, Maya. You were supposed to stay quiet." That night, I sat by the window with the city lights flickering against the glass and replayed every moment of the past few months. I'd been silenced, mocked, erased. But if Skylux thought that was the end of my story, they'd misjudged the wrong woman. Because I wasn't just a flight attendant anymore. I was evidence. And evidence doesn't disappear, not when it's finally ready to speak. I opened a blank document on my laptop and typed the first line of what would become my new mission. They said I was unprofessional. Let me show you what real misconduct looks like. For the first time in months, I smiled. Not the polite smile of service, not the forced calm of survival. This one was sharper, the smile of someone who just found her wings again. Whispers travel faster than planes, especially when those whispers are soaked in fear. After I uncovered the HR memo, I started reaching out cautiously, quietly, using encrypted emails and old crew group chats. Some ignored me. Others replied with one-word messages. "Careful. Stop. He's dangerous." But a few brave ones answered with something more powerful than fear. Truth. They were attendants, former staff, even a junior manager, all women who'd seen too much and said too little. Each had a story that sounded eerily like mine. He cornered me in the crew lounge. They told me to sign a confidentiality agreement. He laughed when I said no. Different flights, different faces, same man, same silence. I created a private chat group, Sky Sisters, and invited only those I trusted. It started with 5 of us. Within a week, it was 14. We shared screenshots, policy memos, NDA excerpts, and timelines. I spent sleepless nights piecing it together like a jigsaw puzzle of corporate rot. One night during a video call, a woman named Carla, a former flight supervisor, leaned close to her camera, eyes rimmed red. "You know what's funny," she said bitterly. "They call it a family business, and they treat us like disposable daughters." Silence hung for a second, heavy and raw. Then I said, "Then let's stop being daughters. Let's be witnesses." That's when the idea truly took flight. We didn't have power, but we had proof. And proof is louder than privilege. A few days later, I got a message request on social media from Leela Torres, an investigative journalist. Her profile picture showed a woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper bio. "Truth has turbulence. Buckle up." "Leela, Maya Carter, I've been following your case. Off record, I know you were framed. Can we talk?" "Me, I've said everything I can." "Leela, not everything, not yet." I hesitated. Journalists meant exposure, and exposure meant danger. But something about her tone, calm, respectful, made me curious. We met in a small cafe near King's Cross. She arrived in jeans, leather jacket, and confidence. The kind of woman who'd stared down a dozen corporate PR walls and still walked away intact. "You've been quiet," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Smart, they expected you to scream." "They already control the story," I replied. "Anything I say becomes a headline they twist." She nodded. "That's why you don't give them a soundbite, you give them evidence." I studied her for a moment. "You believe me?" "I've talked to people inside Skylux," she said. "They've buried complaints before. HR, legal, even board members, all to protect Adrian Knight. What I need is someone brave enough to go on record." "And if I do?" She smiled faintly. "Then we bring them down together." Her confidence steadied me like landing gear on rough air. Over the next few weeks, Leela became my anchor. We met secretly, using burner phones and encrypted drives. I'd send her documents through a secure link, NDA clauses, disciplinary letters, expense logs showing hush payments labeled as training reimbursements. Each new piece fit perfectly into a bigger story, one not just about harassment, but systemic rot. Skylux wasn't protecting Adrian because of family ties. They were protecting their stock price. "The Knights own 40% of Skylux," Leela explained one night, scrolling through data on her laptop. "If this scandal breaks, the company's valuation could nosedive." So they chose silence over justice. "They always do," she said, "until someone makes noise loud enough to drown their PR." I glanced at the clock. 2:37 a.m. "What happens if I go public?" "They'll threaten you, sue you, discredit you." "And if I do?" She met my eyes. "Then they win, again." The air between us felt electric, not fear, power. By early spring, our Sky Sisters network had grown into a quiet army. Attendants from Singapore, Paris, Dubai, all sharing fragments of truth. One night, a message popped up from a username I didn't recognize. "You don't know me. I'm still inside Skylux, and I have something you'll want to see." Attached was a zip file labeled Board Confidential. Inside were scanned reports, internal investigations, deleted complaints, payouts labeled as employee separation bonuses. Leela called me immediately. "Where did you get this?" "Anonymous source." "This is explosive. We need to verify it, but Maya, if it's real, this could collapse the entire airline." I stared at the glowing screen, the company logo stamped on each page, and realized I wasn't scared anymore. The woman they'd humiliated had become their biggest threat. That night, I wrote in my journal again. "They called me a problem. They're about to learn I'm a consequence." The next morning, I walked out of my apartment for the first time without ducking from cameras or whispers. The sky above London was streaked with pink and silver, the kind of dawn that always used to make me homesick for the clouds. I looked up and whispered, "You took my wings. Watch me build my own." The cabin lights dimmed to that soft twilight blue that always made passengers sleepy and calm. Dinner service had just ended. Most people were half watching movies, half drifting. Except Adrian Knight. He was wide awake and drunk on expensive whiskey, power, and boredom. I could feel his gaze before I saw it, that lazy stare that crawled over you like smoke. He beckoned me over with 2 fingers, a smirk already forming. "You're even more stunning under this light," he said, swirling his glass. "Sit with me for a minute. Let's talk." "I'm sorry, Mr. Knight," I replied, keeping my tone steady. "I'm not allowed to sit with passengers during service." "Oh, come on," he drawled. "You're serving me. Consider this part of the job." He wasn't whispering anymore. A few heads turned. My stomach knotted. "If you need anything, please use the call button," I said, stepping back. His voice sharpened. "You think you're too good to talk to me. Do you even know who I am?" I wanted to walk away, but protocol chained me there, calm, polite, unshakable. "You're a valued passenger, Mr. Knight, and I'm just doing my job." He laughed loud, careless. Your job is to smile and serve drinks, sweetheart. Don't act like you're running the company. Something in me cracked at that, not because of what he said, I'd heard worse, but because of the smirks around him. Other passengers, men who thought this was entertainment. I turned to leave. That's when it happened. His hand brushed my hip. Not by accident, not subtly. Intentionally, a reminder that he could do whatever he wanted. My breath caught, I froze. The world narrowed to the sound of my heartbeat, pounding like a drum. He leaned closer, whispered, "Relax, I just wanted to see if the uniform feels as good as it looks." Then click. A phone camera, someone recording. Something inside me, all those years of swallowing anger, enduring disrespect, pretending not to notice, broke. The air tasted metallic. I turned back, slow, deliberate, my voice shaking with fury. "Don't ever touch me again." He grinned. "Or what? You'll report me to my father." And then, my hand moved before my mind did. Slap. A sharp, echoing crack cut through the cabin. The entire first-class section went silent. Even the hum of the engine seemed to fade. His head snapped to the side, eyes wide, more shock than hurt. I stood there, chest rising and falling, trembling not with fear but with release. Every suppressed word, every fake smile, every indignity, it all left me with that single motion. "You can buy this airline, Mr. Knight," I said quietly, "but you'll never own respect." The silence broke, murmurs, whispers, phones rising to record. Someone gasped. Another passenger clapped once before realizing what they'd done. Adrian's shock curdled into rage. "You're finished," he spat. "You have no idea who you just hit." I did, but in that moment I didn't care. I turned and walked down the aisle, past wide eyes and half-hidden cameras. My heart raced. My palms stung. I expected shame to follow. It didn't. What I felt instead was peace. A strange, dangerous kind of peace. By the time we landed in London, though, that peace began to fade. Reality crept in, the stern faces of security, the whispers in the crew room, the way my supervisor avoided my eyes. "Maya," she said softly, "they've asked you to wait in the office. The company's legal team wants a word." I nodded, numb. I already knew what was coming. Adrian had power. His father had more. And in a world like ours, power always came before truth. But I didn't know that someone had already uploaded the video. And that within hours, the whole world would know my name, not as a flight attendant, but as the woman who slapped a billionaire's son at 30,000 feet. I didn't know that my humiliation would become my weapon. Not yet. They made me wait in a glass office at Heathrow for 2 hours. No one spoke to me. No one offered water, just silence and the steady hum of distant announcements. When the door finally opened, Mr. Lewis, the airline's legal counsel, entered, slick hair, perfect suit, eyes that didn't meet mine. "Ms. Carter," he began, his tone cold and rehearsed, "you understand the seriousness of your actions." I nodded, though my hands trembled. "He touched me," I said quietly. "Without consent, I asked him to stop." "That's not the point," he cut in. "You assaulted a passenger on video." I wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered, "He's the owner's son." He sighed, leaning back. "Exactly, which is why this has to be handled carefully." Carefully, the word tasted like poison. Within 20 minutes, I was suspended without pay. Within 2 hours, security escorted me out of the terminal like a criminal. I didn't even get to return my uniform properly. When I got home, my inbox was already flooded: journalists, tabloids, trolls. My phone buzzed endlessly. Some messages said Queen Energy. Others said unprofessional disgrace. The video had exploded. Millions of views, dozens of edits, memes, headlines that made me sound either heroic or hysterical. Flight attendant, SLAPS billionaire air midair. Feminist icon or corporate nightmare. Who is Maya Carter? By sunset, Skylux Airlines released a statement. The company has terminated an employee involved in an onboard incident. We uphold the highest standards of professionalism and customer care. They didn't use my name, but everyone knew. I became a symbol I never asked to be. That night, I locked myself in my apartment, closed every blind, and cried until I couldn't breathe. Not because I regretted slapping him, but because I realized how powerless I truly was. He would move on. His father would spin the story. And me, I'd be blacklisted in every airline group under their control. My career, gone in one flight. Days passed like blurred photographs. Reporters camped outside my building. My parents stopped answering calls. They couldn't handle the attention. Even my closest friend, Clara, another flight attendant, sent only one text. "I'm sorry, Maya. They're saying anyone who defends you could lose their job too." So that was that. The silence hurt more than the headlines. But the world has strange ways of showing you who you really are. One night, scrolling through social media, I saw something, a thread of women sharing their own experiences. Hashtag, fly with respect. Dozens of flight attendants, anonymous at first, posting stories of harassment, of being silenced, of smiling through abuse. They were quoting me. "You can buy this airline, but you'll never own respect." Those words had gone viral. Someone had turned them into a slogan, printed on mugs, shirts, digital posters. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That's when I got the message that changed everything. It came from a private account with a single line. "If you're ready to tell your side, I can help. L." At first, I ignored it. Then curiosity won. "Who are you?" I typed back. Seconds later, the reply appeared. "Let's just say I used to work in Skylux's PR department. I know what they're hiding." My pulse quickened. Could it be real, or was it bait? I hesitated, staring at the screen until another message arrived. "Check the internal audit files from last year. Passenger complaint reports, especially the ones that disappeared. You'll understand." I didn't sleep that night. By morning, I was sitting at my kitchen table with my old work tablet, trying to access Skylux's employee system. I still had a backup login. Maybe they hadn't revoked it yet. They hadn't. And what I found changed everything. Dozens of reports, female staff members, complaints marked resolved with no follow-up, notes saying things like incident closed due to lack of evidence. Some of the names, I recognized them. Women who'd left quietly, women who'd been reassigned. And in one of the reports, dated just 6 months ago, subject, Adrian Knight. Filed by, cabin crew lead, flight 447. Summary, unwanted physical contact, threats of termination. Closed, no action taken. My stomach twisted. I wasn't the first. I wasn't even the fifth. They'd been covering for him all along. That's when it hit me. Maybe my career was gone, but my voice was. If they wanted silence, they'd chosen the wrong woman. I closed my laptop, wiped my tears, and whispered to myself, "You tried to ground me. Now I'm going to make you crash." 3 days after I found the hidden reports, I met my mysterious contact, L. We agreed on a public place, quiet but safe. A coffee shop near the river, early morning. I sat by the window, heart pounding, scanning every face that walked in. Then she appeared, tall, in her 40s, with sharp eyes softened by exhaustion. She slid into the seat across from me and spoke first. "You're brave," she said, "or reckless, maybe both." "You used to work for them?" I asked. She nodded. "Until I refused to bury another complaint. They called it restructuring. I call it silencing." Her name was Lena Hale, former communications manager for Skylux. She handled internal crises, legal leaks, PR disasters. She knew where every body was buried, metaphorically, and maybe not just metaphorically. "They'll try to destroy you," Lena warned. "They've done it before, smear campaigns, fake lawsuits. But if we release this the right way, you'll have protection, public outrage. Once it's viral, they can't bury it again." I stared at her, trying to measure her sincerity. Why help me? She smiled faintly. Because I used to be you. I stayed quiet too long. We spent hours going through the files, over 50 documented incidents of harassment and abuse, all linked to high-profile passengers, senior executives, and one name repeated more than the rest: Adrian Knight. Every resolved case had the same outcome: the woman transferred, fired, or paid off. It wasn't just corruption, it was systemic rot. By evening, Lena slid a flash drive across the table. This contains everything. We'll leak it anonymously through journalist channels, sources who have covered corporate misconduct before. Once it hits, Skylux won't be able to spin it. And if they trace it back to me, I asked, then we make sure your story's already bigger than their lies. I nodded. I'd already lost everything. What else could they take? That night, sitting in the glow of my laptop, I drafted my statement. Not as a victim, not as a headline, as a woman reclaiming her voice. My name is Maya Carter. I was a flight attendant for 10 years. I loved my job until standing up for myself cost me everything. But I'm not the first. Skylux Airlines has silenced women for years. I have the proof, and I'm done staying quiet. We sent it to 3 journalists, 2 women, 1 man, all known for their integrity. Lena handled the secure upload. Then, all we could do was wait. For the first time in weeks, I slept. When I woke up, my phone was exploding again, but this time, the world was on my side. Fly with Respect was trending globally. Headlines screamed, "Whistleblower flight attendant exposes airline cover-up scandal." Exclusive, leaked files reveal pattern of abuse at Skylux. CEO's son accused of misconduct, company in crisis. News anchors replayed my slap video alongside internal memos and confidential reports. The contrast was damning. Protests erupted outside Skylux offices in London, New York, and Dubai. Former employees came forward with their own stories. Within 48 hours, the CEO, Adrian's father, issued a statement of deep concern. Within 72, he stepped down. Adrian Knight disappeared from social media, then from the country. And me. My apartment door filled with flowers, letters, thank you notes. Strangers messaged me saying, "You gave us courage." But it wasn't all applause. Threats came too, anonymous calls, emails warning me to stay quiet if you value your life. Lena insisted I move into a hotel under an alias for a while. "They're cornered," she said, "and cornered men are dangerous." Some nights, I'd lie awake listening to the hum of the city outside, wondering if I'd gone too far, if I'd started a storm I couldn't control. But every time I doubted, I thought of the faces behind those resolved files. The women who'd lost jobs, reputations, or worse, because no one believed them. And I'd remind myself, sometimes the only way to clean a system is to burn it down. A week later, an independent commission announced a full-scale investigation into Skylux. Major sponsors withdrew, flights were grounded, stocks plummeted. I watched it unfold on the news, the empire that once humiliated me crumbling in slow motion. But what surprised me most wasn't their downfall. It was the realization that I didn't feel vengeance. I felt vindication. For the first time, I wasn't surviving. I was free. It was raining the morning I walked into the government hearing room, the kind of cold drizzle that made the world look clean, like it was starting over. The commission had summoned me as a primary witness in the Skylux investigation. The room was crowded with reporters, lawyers, and executives pretending not to sweat under the cameras. Adrian Knight sat 2 rows ahead of me, his posture stiff, his jaw tight. For the first time, he didn't look untouchable. He looked small, cornered by a truth money couldn't erase. When they called my name, I stood. My hands didn't tremble this time. "Ms. Carter," the chairwoman began, "you understand that your testimony will be part of the public record." "Yes," I said, meeting her gaze. "Please describe what happened on Flight 217. So I did, every detail, every word, every look. I spoke not just for myself, but for every woman who'd been told to keep it professional while swallowing abuse. At one point, Adrian's lawyer objected, claiming I provoked the incident. The chairwoman leaned forward. "Mr. Knight," she said sharply, "the video shows otherwise. You may want to reconsider your defense." A low murmur spread through the room. Adrian's expression faltered, the first crack in a lifetime of arrogance. When it was over, I stepped outside to flashing cameras and shouted questions. I didn't answer any of them. I just looked up at the sky, gray and endless, and breathed. It was over. Or at least, my part in it was. 2 weeks later, the verdict came. Adrian Knight, charged with assault and harassment. His father, fined for corporate misconduct, and forced to divest ownership of Skylux. The airline's new board pledged major reforms, anti-harassment protocols, and compensation for victims. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was something. And as the headlines shifted from scandal to reform, I started receiving invitations, talk shows, advocacy panels, interviews. Everyone wanted to hear the woman who slapped a billionaire. But that wasn't the story I wanted to tell. So I turned down most offers. Instead, with Lena's help, I founded something new. Wings of Dignity, a foundation supporting women in aviation and service industries facing workplace abuse. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been grounded, but now I was helping others take off again. The first time I spoke publicly for the foundation, it wasn't on TV. It was at a small seminar in a training center for young flight attendants. They looked at me like I was some kind of legend. I laughed. I wasn't brave, I told them. I was just done being afraid. One of the girls raised her hand. "Would you do it again?" she asked softly. I paused. The truth was complicated. The slap had cost me everything, but also given me back myself. "Yes," I said finally. 1,000 times yes. Months passed. The noise faded. The world moved on to new scandals, new heroes. But sometimes, when I boarded a plane as a passenger now, I'd catch a crew member recognizing me, a discreet nod, a whisper. "Thank you." That was enough. One evening, I found myself back at the same cafe where I'd first met Lena. The city lights shimmered across the river. She smiled when she saw me. "You did it," she said. "You brought the empire down." "No," I corrected. "They brought themselves down. I just stopped helping them stand." We clinked coffee cups like champagne flutes. Outside, the rain had stopped. The night was calm. And for the first time in a long while, I felt the same quiet peace I'd felt the day I first flew, that feeling of lift, of release, of belonging to something bigger than fear. Because revenge, I realized, wasn't about destruction. It was about reclaiming your story and flying it your way. I walked through the same airport that once watched me fall. No uniform, no badge, no fear. And as the planes rose into the sky, I realized something. I never needed their wings to fly. They fired me to silence me. But my truth was louder than their power. So if the world ever tries to break you, don't shrink. Rise. Because storms don't bow to the sky. They change it.
If this story gave you chills, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what's the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen play out?